Welcome to our Just Believe podcast. If you're new here, click that subscribe button and journey with us as we share stories to encourage and inspire. New episodes will be released each week as our guests share their stories of how God has been good to them. Today's special guest is Andrea McGibbon. Enjoy.
One of my favorite phrases goes like this: life happens for you, not to you. And I've come to realize that the reason why life happens for you is because of purpose. And I know that word is used so loosely, but purpose is in everything. Purpose is in every situation that we face. And I think my life has proven and is a testimony of that. So let me give you a little bit of my story. Growing up, I came from a pretty good family background, fairly exposed, never been in lack, traveled from I was at a tender age. You know, my parents both worked, etc. And my parents were married, but honestly, I wish they weren't. I actually wished my father wasn't there. And that's because he and I just couldn't get along. My father was very controlling and everything was about him. And then there was a part of me that felt that people should have the space to be who they are. He, on the other hand, felt he should design everybody who is under his control. In addition to that, there was a lot of emotional scarring coming out of my childhood. And life is just interesting. In the end, when my dad was ill, I was the one who took care of him, was there. And when he passed on with us being okay. I was just okay. I was at peace. You know, even though for years I had disconnected from him, it happened in a way that he didn't die from his sickness early. It was actually surprisingly prolonged. Like, people can't understand how he, being a renal patient, being someone with diabetes, hypertension, heart problem, he really lasted long. And I felt again that there is purpose in everything, because there had to also be closure. But even when situations are dealt with, there is still that message that we tell ourselves at the time when we're going through that rough moment. And I had a lot of messages and narratives in my head, bedded in my mind, and they became my beliefs. No, I hadn't really dealt with my childhood, and I didn't want to either, because for me it was ugly, it was tear-jerking, it was too tender. And coming out of my childhood home, I learned to be tough. I self-tough myself. And so tears and tenderness was not really what I go for. And so I buried those things over the years. And as they surfaced, I buried them some more. And so that was how I went through. On the other side, though, I have always been a star performer. I did well at CXC, I did well at A-levels, I got a government scholarship, went to university, paid for by the government of Jamaica. Then I went to work, did my CPA, passed with flying colors, and the whole works. And so someone looking on the outside at my life would say, yeah, man, you've lived a good life. You've progressed and you've accomplished. And I did. And I take pride in what I have accomplished over the years. I take pride in the quality of my leadership in the professional realm. But there was something missing. And there were several little things on the inside of me that was compromised and limited my full potential, and I knew it. But I was not prepared to dig up those things. I really was terrified of digging up the narratives and the emotions that were connected to my childhood. And the thing is, you are who you are. We don't get to split parts of us. We don't get to select and deselect what we don't want. We are one being. And that carried through my life the entire time. So having daddy issues came out in my relationship with men. And my expectations were off. My harsh response to them were off, because not resolving those things from the past actually brought them into my present. And I didn't realize this until I had to face it eventually. So I spent 19 years in corporate Jamaica, and I climbed the ladder. I went as far as deputy CEO of the company I was working with up to 2018. And I was an exceptional leader, problem solver, people lover. Those things were beautiful about me. And I did everything I could to push all of me, my attention, my time into work. Everything was about work because it was the one area of me that I was proud of. When it comes on now to personal life, when it comes on to relationships, that was poor. And I didn't really connect that what happened in my childhood and not so much what my dad intended, because we know when people hurt us, it's not the intention. People are going through their own journeys and they're going through their own dilemmas and their own narratives. But the messages I told myself coming out of those situations messed me up. And I remember the final year, the last year in corporate, I was in the middle of a huge project, a project that I loved eventually. But because it was so demanding and because happiness was not something I do and I had no happiness reserves left, it took a toll on me. That difficult task, though done well, took a toll on me, the person. And at the end of 2018, I knew I needed to save myself. I didn't know how. I just knew I couldn't be in the work environment anymore. I knew I needed to go very extreme to just deal with the issues that were there. They were stinking. Everything from my past, everything I've been burying, they were starting to stink. They were coming out. So even the things that I genuinely love, I was now compromising. I was now sabotaging. I wasn't sleeping well. I was suffering from insomnia. I don't even want to look at myself in the mirror, and the persons looking on the outside would never know, because there was a side of me that was very genuine too, where I'm a warm person. I love people. I like to help people, but people would never know what was going on the inside of me. But I recognized it was stinking. I recognized it was coming up. It wasn't as controlled and hidden as I wanted it to be. And I was tired. I was just so tired. And I didn't want this life as it was anymore. I didn't like the person who I had become either, because I was compromising my values left, right, and center. Just trying to satisfy my needs, trying to kind of ease the pain that was on the inside of me. And I'm looking for all kind of things, whether it's sex or entertainment or food, like sex and food were the two big things for me. And so my weight would go up and down, and then I'll get depressed about it, and then I would try all kind of fad diets to try and lose the weight, and it was just a roller coaster, and I was just tired of it. And I asked if I could leave, and the permission was granted, and I'm so grateful for that. But asked me if I knew what I was going to do. I had no clue. And that in itself was a problem for me. So I didn't want anybody to be asking me what I was doing, because I didn't know what I was going to do. And anybody who knows me knows that I plan way in advance. I can tell you what I'm going to do in the next month, what I'm going to do in the next year. And for the first time in my life, I had no clue what I was going to do. All I knew was that I couldn't be who I was anymore. Eventually, in looking back, I said, the only thing I can go back to, the only person I can trust was God. And even though I had spent so many years questioning him, ignoring him, wondering if this thing is really real. I'm a Christian, from a long time, but I still questioned God, and I still doubted whether or not his promises were applicable to me. I believe they were applicable to everybody else, but not necessarily to me. And when I looked back over my life, the only constant, the only faithful, consistently faithful was him. People had failed me. I had failed myself. Material things clearly weren't doing it either. They weren't fixing me. Sex wasn't working. Food was frustrating me because it made my weight go up and down. And so the only thing I could draw on in my state of desperation was to go back to God. And I'm just in awe that he's just so amazing that even when we diss him, even when we turn our backs on him, he welcomes us with open arms, like the prodigal son. I'm thinking about that story now. And I started that journey in 2019. So I left corporate, I left my job at the end December 2018, and come January morning, Andrea did not know what she was going to do. But I went to him. About March, April, I remember feeling so low because a venture I was considering was just not going to work. It was just not practical. It wasn't viable. And that day I came to that realization, and I remember I was so broken because I was feeling like I'm failing. I'm feeling like the person who is such a control freak had no more control over her life. And I remember I was bawling and I was on my knees in my room. And then I took out my cell phone and I went into Facebook and then I saw this ad. And funny, the strangest thing is I don't normally listen to the ads, but I listened to this one, and it was Valerie Burton from the CAP Institute. And she was talking about her CTI, Coach Intensive, CIT, Coach Intensive Training Program. And there was some verbiage. And as she spoke, I'm convinced that Valerie wrote her script for me. Everything she said, I heard and I saw myself. She just described me from beginning to end. And listen, before the ad was finished, I was enrolled in the program. I booked my flight before the day ended. And in a week's time, I would have been on my way to Peachtree, Georgia to participate in this training session. I knew nothing about coaching, but I just knew this was the direction I should go. How it would end, no clue. I just knew at this moment, this was the step I needed to take. And I went to that training session. It was beautiful. I cried. They broke me down. But most importantly, I saw my next step. At that training session, I recognized me. And I knew what I should be doing next. So I came back home from that session so energized, and I'm thinking and hoping, okay, the hardship is over. No, that's not how it works. So I ended up I started a business, which was kind of weird because I've always said I'm not starting up no business in Jamaica. I started a business, and even during that process, God was unearthing more. And so the tantrums came, and the tears came, and the discomfort came. But then I realized there is no way to be new unless you get rid of old. You know, the Bible talks about you can't pour new wine into old wineskin. Of course, I know the scripture. But who wants to feel that experience? But that was what was going on in my life. He literally had to get to the intimate, the delicate, the most simplest parts of me so that those can be fixed in order for me to be whole again. And when I realized, and I said, well, the truth is I ain't got nothing to go back to anyway. I didn't like who I was. I know I can't trust people like that. And I know that the things in this world they're just not satisfying me. So I had to work with this process. And I did. And though it was uncomfortable, now in hindsight, now that you've gone over several of them, you realize what a relief. It's just that in the initial moments, it's so uncomfortable because you're used to what you're used to. And we hold on to what we know, and we feel as if we're losing so much control when what we know is being stripped away from us. But it is the most freeing thing that we can do. I am so free. I didn't know freedom. I didn't know what abundance meant. I didn't know about liberty in terms of the real experience. I couldn't even sleep. But here I was, my life was being changed. My life in the intimate parts were being changed, and my experiences were just so much better. I loved my skin. I could look in the mirror. I could smile with me for the first time in my life. Big old 45-year-old, feeling true joy and happiness for the first time. And it wouldn't come had I not taken or allowed God to take me through that uncomfortable journey. So when I say to you that life happens for you, we have that option, we have that choice. The thing is, not everybody responds to him, because I didn't in the past. And we miss out, and then things get tougher. Because if it's not going to work at point A, because of how he loves us so much, he's going to take it up to B. He has to take the notch up to B because he's trying to get us to find our true selves. He's trying to get us to let go of the old so that we can embrace and experience the new, which is what we truly, truly want on the inside of us. And so now I have a different mindset as it relates to problems and difficulties. I still don't like them, but I know that they are purposeful. And it's the same for you. Whatever situation you're going through, just know that there is purpose in it. Things don't happen just for happening's sake. Yes, we can make choices that are not good and we face the consequences, but He is able to turn everything out around for our good. He is faithful either way. Whether He brings it or whether it's consequences, He can use any situation to change our lives. And that's what He has done for me. What has happened now since the rest of 2019 to 2020 amazes me as I look back. I've written a book. I started a training school. I started going public, something I would never do. So now I'm exposing myself to people because I know my purpose. It was uncomfortable because I prefer to be quiet and hidden and in the back, but that's not where He was calling me. And so I also had to be overcoming those insecurities. And one by one, as they surface, I'm dealing with them and I'm asking the Lord to help me through it, and I'm trusting Him through the process, and He's dealing with them. Everything is not finished. I'm still being worked on, but I am at such a better place. I'm at such a better place. I don't even think I'm the same person I was. Like, people who probably saw me 3 years ago and see me today would recognize me physically, but maybe not the personality, because I have become such a different but a better person. And I'm so grateful to God for that. One of the things He has taught me is manna style living, one day at a time. He's dealing with me one day at a time, and He provides for me one day at a time. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has its own problems. It's what you need to do today. And so I'm learning now to perfect and to make the best of each day and to rely on Him day by day, taking the small steps one after the next. And He has been faithful. And what I want to leave with you is that there is purpose in everything. There is purpose that is pulling us in a particular direction. Every situation you're in is leading you and can lead you to your purpose. So remember, life happens for you, not to you.
You just heard the testimony of Andrea McGibbon on the Just Believe podcast. For I know the plans I have for you. This is the Lord's declaration. Plans for your welfare, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11.